Hello, listeners. Welcome to Ithihasa, an Indic history podcast. This is your host, Narendra Vikram, and you're listening to episode 56 of the season Vijayanagara. The tale we are about to unravel takes us deep into the annals of history, to an era when an empire's glory was like a candle burning brighter just before it died. Our story revolves around the last powerful emperor of Vijayanagara, a leader whose reign embodied the very essence of this flickering flame. Imagine, if you will, a time when the grandeur of the Vijayanagara Empire, once an epitome of power and prosperity, was slowly waning. The empire, like a candle nearing its end, began to cast its most brilliant and vibrant light, even as it was surrounded by the encroaching shadows of its own demise. The Emperor Venkatapati Deva Raya II, whose legacy we are about to explore, ruled during these tumultuous times. He stood as the candle's final guardian, its flame dancing defiantly against encroaching darkness. His reign would prove to be a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring spirit of Vijayanagara, as it burned with an intensity that defied its imminent extinguishment. As we embark on this journey, we will witness how the glorious rule of this emperor, much like that flame, burned brighter in its twilight moments. It was a rule that defied fate, challenged destiny, and left an indelible mark on its history. Join us as we delve deeper into the life and times of this extraordinary leader and discover the story of an empire's last gasp of breath before it succumbed to the relentless march of time. But first, let's set the stage and immerse ourselves in the fading splendor of Vijayanagara at its zenith. In our previous episode, we stood witness to the bittersweet climax of an era as we chronicled the fall of one of the Vijayanagara's most beloved emperors, Sri Krishna Deva Raya, a luminary of the Tuluva dynasty. His reign, like a blazing comet streaking across that night sky, left behind a trail of lasting brilliance that adorned the empire. We marveled at the cultural renaissance he spearheaded, the prosperity he ushered in, and the tales of valor and grandeur that made him a legend. As we close the chapter on his remarkable legacy, we couldn't help but be moved by the echoes of his rule, still reverberating through the corridors of time. The fall of this beloved emperor marked not just the end of an era, but the enduring spirit of Vijayanagara that refused to be forgotten. Venkatapati Deva Raya II, a descendant of the legendary emperor Krishna Deva Raya and Aliya Ramaraya, was faced with the daunting task of filling some truly massive shoes. Please note that I use the word descendant loosely here. Venkatapati Raya II in reality belonged to the Aravidu dynasty, related to Aliya Ramaraya, who was the son-in-law of Sri Krishna Deva Raya. Picture this: the empire of Vijayanagara, still echoing with the tales of past glory and the name of Krishna Deva Raya, celebrated far and wide. The weight of expectations, the echoes of past triumphs, all rested upon the shoulders of Venkatapati Raya II. Could he possibly live up to the towering reputation of his illustrious ancestors? The answer, as history would reveal, was a resounding yes. Despite the colossal expectations, Venkatapati Raya proved himself a worthy successor. He navigated the complex challenges of his time, preserving the empire's prosperity and culture with a wisdom and tenacity that would make his forebears proud. In the annals of history, he may not shine as brightly as Krishna Deva Raya, but he contributed his own chapter to the saga of Vijayanagara, ensuring that the flame of his ancestors' achievements continued to flicker. Let's jog our memory with a quick recollection of the Aravidu dynasty. As we saw in the past episodes, post the Battle of the Likota, we saw the death of Aliyarama Raya and destruction of Hampi. Aliyarama Raya's brother, Tirumala Raya, had whisked away the young Tuluva Emperor, Sadashiva Raya, to the safety of Penukunda Fort. But as we know, Sadashiva Raya was a mere figurehead and a puppet. The real power lay in the hands of Aravidus after the soft coup by Aliyarama Raya. Tirumala Raya had somehow stabilized the empire after the devastating and decisive loss at Tallikota and the fall of the mystical city of Hampi, which was the real seat of power. After the supposed murder of Sadashiva Raya, the Aravidus had officially assumed the throne, and after Tirumala Raya, the throne passed on to one of his 4 sons, Sri Rangaraya I. The other 3 sons were Raghunatha, Rama and Venkatadeva, also known as Venkatapati Deva Raya. After the death of Sri Rangaraya, the throne passed on to his younger brother Rama. What is interesting here is the historical sources don't have almost anything to say about Rangaraya's successor Rama Raya. Again, not to be confused with Aliyarama Raya. But most of the records or histories only speak about his successor and his brother Venkatapati Deva Raya II. This can only mean one thing, that the rule of Rama Raya was extremely short, and we have no recorded evidence of what exactly happened to him and why his rule was almost non-existent. According to the epigraphical evidence based on the Kumbakonam grant of Venkatapati Deva Raya II, dated to 1590 CE, it mentions one of his brothers, possibly Rama Raya, and how he reigned for a short time. This narrative is even corroborated by some contemporary Jesuit visitor letters. What is even more interesting is the elevation of Venkatapati Deva Raya was in spite of his deceased brother Rama Raya's 2 sons already living. So it would appear that Venkata's nephews, named Tirumala and Ranga, who were governing Srirangapatnam, had clearly a much legitimate right to the throne after the death of their father Rama Raya and their uncle Sriranga. But that was not to be. There is an interesting letter written by Father N. Pimenta in Goa and dated to 1602 CE. The letter has this to say about this whole matter. Quote, after the demise of this prince's father, the kingdom was given by the unanimous vote of all the classes to the brother of the deceased, the brother being Venkata II. That is the one who is ruling at present, rejecting the rights of the deceased's children who on account of their age were not able to rule over a kingdom. Unquote. Then the Dalavai Agraharam plates, epigraphical evidence, has this to say about Venkata II's coronation. Quote, Venkata was then anointed according to the prescribed rules by the spiritual preceptor of his Gotra, the famous Tatacharya, who was the ornament of the wise, just as Rama was appointed or anointed by Vasishta. On this occasion, the new king poured forth gold from his hand like rain from a cloud. Unquote. There are 2 other epigraphical records that lay special stress on Venkataraya's physical attributes, exclaiming how handsome he was. A European Jesuit, Father Dujarric, seems to agree when he writes this about the Raya. Quote, the king is quite handsome. Although a little dark, his eyes are big. He is of medium size, but his limbs are in good proportion. He dresses quite nicely and always shows a special regard for royal majesty mingled with a charming plainness of manner. Unquote. Venkataraya was initially elected or anointed as the emperor at Chandragiri, which is in modern day Andhra Pradesh. So naturally, the coronation ceremony was performed there. But not long after, he moved his court to the fort of Penukonda, the capital of his two predecessors, Sri Rangaraya and Tirumala Raya, and also probably Rama Raya, that is the brother. This coronation, or also called Pattabhisheka, was presided over by Venkataraya's family guru, Lakshmi Kumara Tatacharya. He was the descendant of the great saint and reformer Ramanujacharya, and two of his ancestors had been the cause of the conversion of the emperor Virupaksha, who is from Sangama dynasty, from Shaivism to Vaishnavism. Venkataraya was very devoted to Tatacharya, and it reflects in a contemporary poem, quote, that the king entrusted the whole kingdom to his guru, and he himself led a life of retirement, doing service to him like Kulashekara of the old. But the second half of this excerpt from the poem is totally false. Venkatapati Raya was certainly not an idle sovereign who indulged in sensual pleasures or debauchery or laziness. He was anything but that. He actually ruled effectively except during the last years of his life, when disabled by age and sickness, during which time he entrusted the administration of the empire to one of his wives and her brother. Coming back to the king's preceptor, Tatacharya, and his importance, it's important to point out the fact that the European Jesuits visiting the court of Venkatapati Raya had immense jealousy against the king's guru for obvious reasons, and they did everything they could to slander the guru in their letters to their European masters back home. Just like today, back then too, the Christian missionaries looked down upon Hindu gurus and natives of India as infidels and savages who in their eyes followed a debased pagan faith, and who could only be saved by the grace of Jesus Christ. This is what they thought, even today. So in that sense, not much has changed in the last 500 years. Hindus are still fighting against predatory evangelism being imposed under the guide of secularism. Along with the reports on Tatacharya, the names of several ministers of Venkataraya have also been made known to us, mainly through the contemporary poems. One of the inscriptions dated to 1605 CE states that the chief Matla Ananta was like the right hand of emperor of Karnataka Samrajya, which is Vijayanagara. There is another figure named Tariguppula Datta Mantri, Pemmasani Pedda Timmaraja, Tammaya Mantri, who were in the council of ministers of the Raya. The chief military officer of Venkataraya was Gubburi Obarajaya, who is usually identified in historical records as Obaraja, was the brother-in-law of Venkataraya. The Vijayanagara Empire, despite losing some northern provinces to the Deccan Sultanates after the fateful Battle of Talikota in 1565 CE, it still controlled a vast territory. To give you an idea, it covered most of southern India, including places like Malabar and other regions up north like Honavar and Bhatkal. It had a long coastline along the Bay of Bengal, stretching from Cape Comorin to Orissa, covering areas like Coromandel and Mylapore, or also known as Santhom. The emperor received help from the viceroy of Srirangapatnam, as well as various local rulers and chiefs in governing this massive empire. However, it appears that the empire was divided into different administrative parts. A document from 1596 CE, issued by the temple authorities of Kanchipuram, hints at this by mentioning that Kanchipuram was in the Chandragiri region of the Tondai Mandalam province in the Soromandalam country. Venkata was a very powerful king. Father Dujaric, who was a Portuguese Jesuit priest, described Raya as Emperor and King of Kings, as he was considered the mightiest of all rulers. By the end of his rule, Raja Vodiyar of Mysore even referred to him as a master of the four oceans. However, his reign faced significant challenges right from the start. Within his own dominions, there were rebellions among petty chiefs or vassals who believed Venkata was responsible for the death of the previous emperor, Sadasiva Raya. Before 1595 CE, the Nayaks of Tanjore, or also Tanjavur, Madurai, and Jinji, had already stopped acknowledging him as their ruler, as they didn't want to accept someone who had deposed the rightful king of Vijayanagara. Was there Venkata's hand in the assassination of Sadasiva Raya? We don't know for sure. Or maybe we do. But it's plausible that Tirumala Raya's sons had a motive to throw aside the last relic of the Tuluva dynasty, who was already a mere figurehead without any power. Like I said earlier, Sadasiva Raya was a puppet. This rebellion set off a chain reaction, with many other local chiefs following suit. This isn't just speculation. Historical sources from the time confirm these internal troubles. So there probably is a strong truth to the insinuation that Venkataraya had a hand in the assassination or the murder of the puppet ruler Sadasiva Raya. Venkata was even called the crusher of the pride of Avahala Raya and the hero who punished kings who break their word in the Mangalampada grant. The Dalavai Agraharam plates praised him as their excellent conqueror of Chaurasi Durga, who struck fear into hostile kings in all directions and was a formidable force on the battlefield. After facing numerous rebellions, Venkataraya displayed his unwavering resolve and military prowess, ultimately quelling all dissent and compelling the rebels to acknowledge his rightful authority. Around 1592 CE, during an attack on Penukunda by the Sultan of Bijapur, which we'll talk about later in detail, Venkataraya decided to move the empire's capital back to Chandragiri. This shift supposedly revealed a softer side of his character. He had been fiercely battling the empire's enemies, but now, perhaps due to early signs of aging, he longed for Chandragiri, a city where he had served as a governor and viceroy of the Tamil region for many years earlier. Chandragiri held a special place in his heart, like a second home. Chandragiri's history stretched back to ancient times when it was a stronghold of the Yadavas. Venkataraya's predecessor, Narasimha Saluva, had expanded the fort, and it became a treasury during his reign. The Portuguese even called it Narasingha after him. Krishnadevaraya was occasionally referred to as a Raja of Chandragiri, suggesting his connection to the fort, and probably even Krishnadevaraya loved that place. Inscriptions from the late 1500s to early 1600s mention Venkata ruling from Vijayanagara, but they also show him associated with Chandragiri. It seems that during this time, Chandragiri was sometimes referred to as Vijayanagara, just like Penukanda had been in the past. This historical insight highlights a continuity of the capital being called Vijayanagara, whether it was Hampi Anagundi, Penukonda, Chandragiri, or as we'll see later, Vellore. Let's take a small detour and look at an interesting side note from an European Jesuit's chronicles that details some of the social life back then in the times of Venkataraya. Father Dujarric, the Jesuit, provided intriguing details about a social institution among the nobility in Chandragiri, somewhat akin to a modern-day gymnasium. This place had a central yard with a floor so smooth it resembled a mirror, surrounded by a red sand walkway soft as a bed. Nobles would come here for wrestling, boxing, jumping, fencing, and other exercises, all aimed at strengthening them. Young, strong individuals, known as gittas, which is actually a Telugu word, would assist, rubbing and massaging the noblemen until they perspired or until they sweat. Afterward, the gittas covered the nobleman's body with sand, performed massages, and manipulated their limbs, making them feel rejuvenated. After all these activities, they were brushed, anointed, and washed with warm water, and then they dressed. Nobles followed this exercise routine almost daily before dinner, and it worked wonders. It's said, as per the Portuguese Jesuits, even men in their 70s in the Vijayanagara nobility looked as youthful as those in their 30s. This was a description of Chandragiri's gymnasium, where the Jesuit priest had once been a spectator. Chandragiri's proximity to Tirupati held a special place in the emperor's heart. Many of his inscriptions and grants during that time were closely connected to Tirupati and the deity Lord Venkateshwara. On August 18, 1598 CE, while visiting Tirupati, Venkata granted a village to several Brahmins, renaming it Tirumalambapuram. Furthermore, in 1606 CE, a Tamil inscription near the Varadaraja shrine in the Srinivasa temple at Tirupati recorded a grant by Venkatapati Raya to provide offerings of rice to the god. In 1601 to 1602, he made the Velapaka grant, again in the presence of the Lord Venkateshwara. At Tirupati, Venkataraya clearly continued the tradition of generosity set by his predecessors when it came to supporting temples and Brahmins, and also especially Tirupati, ensuring the maintenance and flourishing of Sanatana Dharma. As we wrap up today's episode, we have only scratched the surface of Venkataraya II's rule, but fear not, the journey continues. In our next installment, we'll delve deeper into his life and times. I appreciate you joining me on this podcast, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast to catch the next episode. Your reviews on your favorite podcast platforms also mean the world to us, helping us reach more history enthusiasts like you. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, keep exploring the rich tapestry of the past with your host, Narendra Vikram on Ithihasa, India History Podcast. Thank you. Have a nice day.